Hey, hey, hey! Welcome to my cozy corner of the internet. This is Nephilim VA bringing you the 21st chapter of Inheritance, written by A is for Amy 71 on AO3. Midoriya's sleep is plagued by nightmares, so we can only hope he has enough energy for school. But before we find out, the trigger warnings. This fanfiction is for mature audiences with canon-typical violence and a trigger warning for major character death. If that isn't your style, then I recommend Shades of Green, which is written by Maybe It's Friendly on AO3. It can be found on my channel! Canon Divergence is the name of the game and indulges the what-ifs of Midoriya Izuku having a quirk. With that being said, the chapter summary is as followed. What goes better with a hero than their costume? Now I implore you to sit back and relax whilst I read to you. Chapter 21. Izuku realized that his alarm would go off in under an hour and decided that he'd had enough sleep for now. The nightmares were still fresh in his memory, and his room felt stifling and hot in the aftermath, the sweat crawling over his skin like tickling ants. He got dressed in shorts and a t-shirt that said workout shirt on the front and went out to the living room. He got out a piece of paper and wrote a note on it in black marker. I'm going for a run up and down the stairwell for exercise. I promise not to leave the building. He went and held up the note in front of the camera in the living room, hoping that whoever was watching wouldn't freak out on him. He propped the note up on the kitchen counter where his dad could see it if he woke up before he got back. He went through his stretches quickly and headed out. The door to the stairwell from the lobby required a tenant's key to gain access, and he knew that it was being closely monitored in any case. He should be as safe as he was at his apartment, right? He opened the door and started downward, keeping a steady pace, turning on each landing to go down the next, and the next, and the next, until he reached the bottom floor. When he got there, he saw Rapid Fire standing there, looking at the screen of his phone, which held up a greeting. Izuku could see that he was keeping an eye on the security monitors through the phone. You're up early, the psychic said. Yeah, I guess I'm feeling restless, Izuku said, jogging in place. Do what you need to do, he said. I'll be right here. Good thinking holding up a sign, by the way. Izuku nodded, and turned to climb the stairs he'd just descended. By the time he stopped 30 minutes later, he was sweaty, but much calmer. A quick shower had him refreshed, and by the time his father woke, breakfast was ready, and Izuku was looking forward to putting the rough night behind him. Good morning, Midoriya! Izuku smiled at Ida, who was the first to arrive at their class again. He looked as stiff as he had yesterday, and Izuku figured that this was his default mode. Hey, Ida, Izuku said, dropping his bag off at his desk before turning to join his new classmate. Sorry our conversation got cut short yesterday. I completely understand. You should never keep someone willing to do you a favor waiting. He punctuated his comments with his hands, chopping the air for emphasis, which Izuku found curious and sort of funny. I'm kind of on a strict schedule at the moment, Izuku said vaguely. I see, Ida said, politely dropping the subject in favor of asking another question. Do you mind telling me more about your quirks while we wait for our classmates to arrive? Sure, Izuku said easily. I'd like to know more about yours too. I kind of make it a hobby to analyze quirks. Izuku explained about how his quirk worked, and how he'd gotten so many of them by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He left out the involvement of All for One and his own mother's death. No need to make a hard explanation even more difficult by making it awkward right before school. Fascinating, Ida said with interest as Izuku explained. Some of those could be extremely useful. Why, the polyglot quirk alone could be a ticket to work almost anywhere in the world. Izuku told him that it had come in handy during his recent trip to Taiwan, but didn't get much further than that, since the others were beginning to arrive. He went to sit at his desk, and when Kaminari and Kirishima made a beeline for Izuku, he had a feeling he knew what was coming. He wasn't wrong! Dude, Bakugo said you have 11 quirks, Kaminari said excitedly, catching the attention of everyone else in the class. And that you got them from dead people, Kirishima added, looking doubtful. Well, he's partially right, Izuku said, relieved that they didn't just take whatever Kachan said as truth. It was refreshing that someone would come to talk to him about it first. I actually have 13, though. 13? Mineta scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. What's ridiculous is that you all aren't already in your seats by the time I arrive, for the second day in a row. Aizawa looked like he hadn't slept. He had an energy jelly packet in his hand, which he was twisting the plastic cap from as he stood behind his desk. As everyone scrambled, he sucked on the straw of the packet and emptied it in one long pull before putting the cap back on and setting it down. Does one of you want to explain why you kept me waiting? Sir, Kaminari said, raising his hand in the air, does Midoriya really have 13 quirks? Izuku sighed as he felt his cheeks heat. All eyes were on him and Kachan was laughing quietly in front of him. Yes, Aizawa said flatly. Can we move on with our day now? Everyone murmured for a few moments until Aizawa glared them into silence. You were all given a copy of the schedule and the syllabus yesterday. Izuku listened with half an ear to what the teacher was saying, but mostly he was trying not to react to the knowledge that everyone in class was staring furtively at him. Aizawa went on as if he hadn't a care in the world, explaining that their day would be divided into 2 parts. In the mornings you'll have typical high school instruction such as English, math, history, modern literature, art history, geography, and the rest, he told them, sounding bored. After lunch is hero training, which will include a variety of different exercises with a variety of different instructors who all specialize in different aspects of hero work. He made a few announcements relating to the school and various upcoming activities, then turned them over to Yamada-sensei, also known as Voice Hero Present Mike. He was their new English teacher, and while Izuku hadn't been their stellar student before, he was able to shine now, already having some background in learning the language before his polyglot quirk came into play, allowing him to speak and read English with some fluency and excellent pronunciation, making the other students marvel at how good it was. He would still have to work to master it, but it would be much easier than it had been in the past, which he was grateful for. They had maths with ectoplasm, which sent Izuku into a fanboy frenzy, unable to stop himself from muttering to himself about all of the facts he knew about the teacher. It wasn't until Kachan turned around and growled at him to shut up that he realized he was talking aloud and apologized for disrupting the class. After maths was Japanese history, taught by a grizzled, retired hero by the name of the Badger, who sometimes forgot he was teaching kids and occasionally threw swear words into his lectures. Izuku appreciated that he was passionate about the subject and enjoyed the lesson very much. Lunch followed history class, where they all went to a huge dining area where they could buy really inexpensive yet delicious food made by a pro hero named Lunch Rush. Uraraka was particularly excited by this prospect and ordered an especially large meal. Ida waved to Izuku from across the room, indicating that there were seats near him that were still available in the rapidly filling dining room. Uraraka was right behind him, and they both headed over. "It's you!" Izuku followed the sound of a loud voice and looked to his left, where he saw a familiar tall figure holding a lunch tray. "You're Arashi?" Izuku grinned at the other boy, glad to see him. They had got along well at the recommendation test, after all. "I got placed in 1B, he said excitedly. "Everyone's pretty cool." "Everyone in 1A is nice too," Izuku said. "I'm going to sit with my class," Yorashi said, "but let's talk later." "Sounds good," Izuku agreed, turning to go and join Ida and Uraraka. They were joined by Kaminari, Kirishima, and Mineta, who all wanted to grill Izuku about his quirks, and lunch turned into a loud and lively meal. Izuku didn't mind their questions, though it was strange to be the focus of so much attention when everyone else had such amazing quirks. It was a little frustrating to be talking about himself when he really wanted to be the one asking questions. He explained about how inheritance worked and how he didn't know if or when he'd reach a limit of the number of quirks he could hold. He got a lot of the usual suggestions about it, like hanging out near hospitals or travelling to disaster zones so he could get super powered up, but Izuku just listened to the increasingly wild ideas with detached humour. They didn't have the years of warnings and lessons from Sir under their belts, so they weren't thinking of the moral or ethical implications their ideas presented. It was the kind of talk people resorted to for improbable scenarios, like, if I found a genie in a bottle. He knew they didn't mean anything by it, and he didn't take it to heart. After lunch, Aizawa met them back in their classroom and explained that they would be having a new teacher at UA for their basic hero training class. Izuku looked toward the door as it slid open, and his jaw dropped. I am here! Coming through the door like a normal person! All Might was entering the room with dramatic flair, with his trademark grin firmly in place. All Might? Izuku cried out, jumping to his feet. Sit down, you damn nerd, Kachan said, as if every line of his own body wasn't practically vibrating with excitement. The other students were almost as excited as Izuku, who took a seat with embarrassed awkwardness. He'd had no idea that All Might would be a teacher at UA this year. He wondered why no one had said anything to him. Had they been afraid that he'd let the cat out of the bag? That's his Silver Age costume, Kirishima said enthusiastically enough that Izuku didn't feel like such a huge nerd anymore. I'm actually getting goosebumps, Ashido said, bouncing in her seat. All Might struck a dramatic pose that showed off his muscles, and Izuku grinned. I am also here to mold you into heroes by putting you through all kinds of different training, All Might told them. So without further delay, today we'll be working on this. He held up a small poster in one hand that read Battle on it. Battle training! Uraraka read aloud. Battle! Kachan said with a manic-looking grin. The rest of the class seemed almost as excited. Then All Might pressed a button on a remote and the room filled with a quiet rumbling as panels slid out of the walls revealing numbered cases with handles. For this kind of training, you'll need these, All Might said with a booming laugh. Before being admitted, you all filled out your special request forms. That and your quirk registry were taken into account to craft the best possible gear for each of you. Costumes! Izuku said excitedly. Yeah! Several of the others cheered. Go suit up! All Might told them with a grin. Then meet me out at Training Ground Beta. Everyone scrambled to grab the case that corresponded to their seat number and scuttled out of the room. Izuku was the last one out, and he didn't hesitate to give All Might a high five when the giant hand was offered when they met at the classroom door. No words were exchanged, but Izuku felt happiness swell inside him as he went to check out what his new costume would end up looking like. Everyone was so busy getting kitted out that no one was paying attention to anyone else in the locker room. Izuku wished he had time to sit and read the manual that came with his costume, but he knew it would have to wait until later. For now, he simply admired the design and the colour as he lifted out the main bodysuit. It was bluish-green with black accents. Though not as deep as green as his hair or eyes, it was more of a teal. The fabric was tightly woven, sturdy but flexible, and fit almost like a second skin. It zipped up the front to just under his chin. The suit was long-sleeved and the legs had stirrups on them to keep them anchored in place. His boots were the requested red and looked very similar to his everyday high tops that he'd been wearing nearly daily for a couple of years. since he'd seen All Might wearing a pair of them in a candid shot of him in a tabloid. They had decent tread, had a matte finish, clear coat of plastic over them, and were lightweight enough that they wouldn't hamper his ability to levitate. There was a utility belt in red, made of the same kind of fabric as the suit, and a simple touch showed him that it would change colour as desired. The pouches on the belt were all part of the belt, so they would change colour along with it, needing only a single touch, saving time if he needed to camouflage quickly. His headgear was very similar to what wrestlers wear, with a built-in receiver in the ear covering, and clear visor over his eyes. There was a jaw guard that was a separate piece that snapped into place with super strong magnets that resembled a grin with its vertical slats for air filtration. All Might had designed that part. Izuku also had wanted something that resembled All Might's trademark hair spikes, but Sir had vetoed that idea, saying it was too obvious, and Gran had pointed out that it would make him look like just a damn bunny rabbit. The last detail was the gloves. They were black, of the same material as the suit and belt. There was something hard embedded across the knuckles, and Izuku guessed it was plastic, but would have to check the manual later. There were fasteners at the wrists to keep them from sliding off of his hands, and the index finger on each hand was exposed, for dexterity and so he could use his colour-changing quirk if he wanted. With 7 touches, his entire costume would completely change colour, though he knew he wouldn't always have that kind of time. There were things he would likely need to refine along the way, but for now he was thrilled. Once he was dressed, he turned to see that the others were mostly ready too. They all looked so cool. Izuku grinned as they filed out of the door, and met up with the girls, who were just emerging from their own changing room. Izuku surveyed their costumes and wanted to do some flips in excitement. He tried to hold it in as they walked as a group to meet All Might and Aizawa-sensei at the entrance of Ground Beta. "Looking good, ladies and gentlemen," All Might praised them as they came to a stop in a semicircle. "A confident bearing and well-designed suit can inspire confidence and trust, which you will need because as of today, you are heroes." "Listen up, everyone," Aizawa said from beside All Might. Their teacher was almost dwarfed by the huge hero, but showed no sign of discomfort. "Today you're going to be broken up into pairs. One team will be acting as villains and the other will be acting as heroes. You'll be graded by how well you coordinate with your teammate, overall strategy, and how well you comport yourself as an individual. Bonus points will be given for winning teams. You'll all have earpieces and will be observed using cameras and robots placed to give us the best views of the areas you'll be using." When he didn't elaborate further, All Might stepped back into his role and continued. "Teams will be chosen by lottery. There are 2 bags, one with everyone's names and the second with 4 tiles in it. Villain team and hero team." "That makes sense," Ida said with an approving nod. "Pro-heroes are often called to work with others they may have never even met before, or don't work with very often. We must be ready at all times to deal with new people, as well as new situations." "Exactly so, young man," All Might agreed. "So, let's get started, shall we?" Without further ado, All Might plunged his hand into the first bag and drew out 4 strips of paper. "Step forward, Yaoyorozu, Midoriya, Todoroki, and Bakugo." The 4 of them moved forward, and at All Might's urging, each pulled a tile from the second bag. "Our hero team will be Midoriya and Todoroki," All Might announced loudly. "Our villains are Yaoyorozu and Bakugo." Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate all the support you've given me. I find it hilarious that in this universe, Izuku doesn't end up with bunny ears, but I also love the mix-up of the teams for the battle training. I can't wait to see how this pans out. All credits go to the original creator of this fanfiction. A is for Amy71 on AO3. I would highly appreciate it if you gave this video a like and you subscribe to the channel and you hit the notification bell to be notified of when I next upload. There is no pressure to do so though. Thank you for visiting my cozy corner of the internet. Keep growing my sunflowers. Mwah!